Hi, Team Cara, Emily, and Brian, which is now Team Mary Tina Hogan. So, just a few little bits of advice on how to play Mary Tina and her team. First of all, who she is. She's a Fine Gael Dáil deputy. She's from Wexford, just outside New Ross, a rural area. So, Mary Tina is very obviously a rural based politician. She's 46, so she's experienced, but she's not that experienced. The main thing to note is she's never had a ministerial position. So you can play that either ways. One way you could say, I'll go talk about that with supporters and detractors. One people would say, oh, she's not experienced, she never has been a minister. The other thing you could say, well, actually, we are the Heart Party. We're looking for our presidential candidate. If we select someone like Ethan Novak or Pat Patterson, who have been Taoiseach or Deputy Taoiseach, Taoiseach, sorry, over the last few years, the Shamrock Party will just come and have a go at us and say, oh, look at all the things you failed to do. Where you say, what we need is a new pair of hands to be our presidential candidate. We don't need someone who's been Taoiseach for forever like Pat Patterson or for quite a while like Ethan Novak. We need someone in the party who's effectively largely a new face, but also someone who knows how politics works, who's got some experience in politics. So that's how I would play that if I was you. You're a female candidate, you're from a rural area. This is important also in terms of how you should go about your campaign. Just to note, really, from this point on, you can start campaigning on the forum. And as you're actually the first team to identify yourselves, you have an immediate advantage. So make use of it. My candidate's already in the forum, so you have someone there you can spark against. I'm playing Éanna Ní Chaoimh, who is basically a Fianna Fáil version of Mary Tina Hogan, only slightly older. Someone who was overlooked for ministerial office, but they're a Dáil deputy, so they've got a bit of experience. Éanna is a bit quirkier, and I will be purposely making mistakes in my campaign because I obviously don't want to be the Heart Party candidate. But it's a similar vibe. It's a rural politician, someone who's a bit bitter because they feel the party leader overlooked them, and someone who can say, look, guys, I've never been a minister, so I can't be blamed for anything. I can't be blamed for any bad decision the government's made in the last few years because, look, I wasn't a minister, I wasn't the Taoiseach. Pat Patterson, Ethan Novak, if they're our party candidate, the Shamrocks are going to eat them up in the campaign. What you want is someone like me. The fact you're from a rural background, you should play on that. Where do you go campaigning? Well, Leitrim Loud. If Mary Tina is to win this election, I think she needs to win Leitrim. She needs to win Leitrim. She needs to prove, look, I can win in a rural county. Loud could be important. The way I would play Loud is maybe focus more on rural parts of Loud as opposed to Drogheda, Dundalk. I presume most of the other candidates would say, oh, I'm in Drogheda, I'm in Dundalk. So why don't you go to the smaller places like Dunleer or Castlebellingham or some of the rural Monaster, Bias, some of the more rural places in Loud and play on the rural issues. Supporters say, look, she's down to earth. She's not one of the Dublin elite, so play on that. She works hard, and she's just been overlooked because she doesn't play the Dublin game. Others will say, oh, she wasn't appointed because she just wasn't up to the job, and if she campaigns in Dublin, she tries to win in Dublin, she's no chance there. Now you'll say, look, like, that's nonsense. So yeah, I would kind of think about how you would deal with that if that becomes an issue. Say if you become one of the front runners in the next week or so, this might be something that's thrown in. You say, look, how do you know I can't win Dublin? I'm going to prove I can win in Dublin. I'm going to prove I can win in urban areas. But what I'd say is, like, if you're making a choice, there's 3 of you in the team, I'd say try and recruit someone. And I'll give you a chance on Wednesday to try and recruit someone. There's 3 or 4 of you in the team. If you think the best thing to do is, instead of trying to do well in both places, if you say, look, we're better off winning somewhere as opposed to finishing second or third in both places, then in the first 2 counties, the 2 early counties, Leitrim seems a more viable option for someone like Mary Tina Hogan than Loud. You move on then to Laois and Longford. Laois is practically next door. I know Mary Tina's Wexford, but Laois isn't that far from Wexford. I would make a play on Laois, try to win Laois. Obviously, there's someone in the race who knows a lot about Laois, so just be careful there. That's myself, but again, I'm not trying to win this election, so you can tear strips off my character. Longford is very rural, so Laois, Longford, and then if you're still doing well, and I can't see why, Limerick maybe play more for the rural parts of Limerick as opposed to Limerick City. And if all the other candidates are spending all their time in Limerick City, say, look at these guys, they're out of touch. They think Limerick begins and ends in Limerick City. They're not looking at places like Patrickswell, like Skeeton, like Newcastle West, etc., etc. Now, one of you should play the candidate, obviously. And again, it's up to yourselves. I would say, obviously, which of the three of you, I would say generally, ideally, the most confident person should play the candidate, because if you win this election, that person will have to take part in the presidential election debate. So someone who wouldn't mind doing that, but you also need someone who's willing to do the work in terms of posting. It doesn't necessarily have to be the best poster out of the three of you, but definitely the first or the second best poster. You don't want to have a situation where there's three of you, two of you are doing all the posting, but the person who's the candidate is doing no posting, because otherwise the rest of us will be saying, oh, you're talking about how great Mary Tina is, but where is Mary Tina? Now, one of you should be Mary Tina Hogan. The rest of you have a choice between playing Zach Boyle, who sounds very similar to Mark Boyle in a way, just like Aidan Keaton, he sounds very similar to myself. Rita Roach, who is interesting, she's linked to one of the other potential candidates. So Rita, if Eddie Rocket Roach becomes a candidate, there's a bit of scope for fun for Rita there, saying, look, there's my grandfather, I know all about him, why am I not supporting him? I won't tell you now, but why knowing that guy isn't worth knowing. And Mags Bellew is basically the urban member of the team. So Mags is an independent councillor from Waterford City. So if there's three of you and one of you is playing Mags, then Mags is the person you send to campaign in Dundalk or Drogheda. Mags is the person who should lead up the campaign in Dublin City. If you're there until the end, Mags is your urban candidate, basically. So hopefully there's a few pointers that will help you. Last bit of advice, I'd say, decide who's going to play who very quickly and hit the campaign trail immediately, because the big idea of the primary elections is the sooner you're in the contest, the sooner you can build up momentum and the better the chances you have of winning, and winning big in the early counties. And if you win the early counties, you have a better chance of winning the next few counties. So good luck, and hopefully I'll see you on the campaign later today. And I'm going on the campaign trail just to slag your candidate off. So see ya.